All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're digging into the absolutely brutal and bloody history of London's post-war criminal underworld. This is a story all about a violent changing of the guard, where the fall of one criminal empire just cleared the way for an even more terrifying one to take its place. To really get a feel for the world we're about to step into, you gotta start with the source material. And this quote, it just sets the stage perfectly. We are not talking about movie gangsters here. This is about real people and the unbelievable violence that really defined their lives.
So where does this all kick off? We're in London, right after the Second World War. The city was, of course, scarred by bombs, but as it started to heal, a totally different kind of war was brewing in its streets, its clubs, and its back alleys.
See, before the war, a powerful Italian family, the Sabinis, basically ran the show. But when the war broke out, they were rounded up and interned as enemy aliens, even though they were born and raised in Britain. Their removal left this massive void, and for any ambitious, violent man out there, well, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. So who was first to step into that void? Let's talk about the guys who dominated the late 40s and early 50s. Meet Jack Spot Comer and Billy Hill, the old guard who ruled with razors, fists, and just pure intimidation. The rise to the top was incredibly fast and unbelievably violent. Jack Spot was already a veteran of massive street brawls. He and Billy Hill teamed up, smashed their rivals, and just took over. Their whole reign was defined by these moments of shocking public violence, like that legendary knife fight in '55 that really cemented their power, right before it all came crashing down. And listen, this wasn't just some back alley brawl, no. This was a statement. When Albert Dimes, a seriously tough guy himself, was attacked, he ended up literally running for his life in broad daylight. The image of him, bleeding all through the streets of Soho, that sent a message to everyone. Spot and Hill were in charge. Period. And this right here, this shows you the level of brutality we're dealing with. Just look at these injuries. They're taken straight from the hospital reports. A 6-inch gash on his forehead, right down to the bone. Not to mention stab wounds, lacerations. This was a savage, near-fatal attack designed to do one thing: terrify. And what was Jack Spot's response when the police finally questioned him? This quote says it all, doesn't it? It's our business. In their world, the police were completely irrelevant. Violence wasn't a crime, it was just how you settled business disputes. They were playing by a totally different set of rules.
But of course, empires always fall, so let's move on to the next generation, because as Spot and Hill started to fade, two new powers emerged, and they would go on to become the most infamous gangsters in all of British history. We are of course talking about the Kray twins and their bitter rivals, the Richardson Gang.
Now, what's so fascinating here is how these two gangs had totally different philosophies. On one hand, you had the Krays from the East End. They craved fame, they wanted to be celebrities, rubbing shoulders with actors and politicians. They used high-profile violence to build their brand. But the Richardsons from South London, they were a different breed. Their game was industrial-scale fraud, scrap metal, fruit machines, less glamorous for sure, but hugely profitable. And their method of control wasn't about public image, it was about pure, raw terror, which earned them a truly sickening reputation. You see, the Krays were masters of fear. They knew the threat of violence could be just as powerful as the act itself. After one of their crew committed a murder at a place called the Pen Club, the whole case just fell apart. Why? Because the witnesses were absolutely terrified into silence. One was attacked in her own home, another just packed up and fled the country. 27. Just let that number sink in. One witness who actually dared to talk to the police was attacked by a group of thugs in a crowded cafe, in front of women and kids. He was slashed so badly he needed 27 stitches. The message was crystal clear. You talk, and this is what happens to you. Now, as terrifying as the Krays were, believe it or not, their South London rivals took cruelty to a whole other level. A level that shocked even the most hardened criminals. They weren't just violent, they were sadistic. And this right here is just chilling. After hours of torturing someone, the gang's leader, Charlie Richardson, would give his victim a clean shirt to wear home. It became known as getting a shirt from Charlie, this terrifying calling card that mixed this mock politeness with absolute depravity.
So what happened before you got that shirt? Well, these details came straight from witnesses in court. Victims were put through these so-called mock trials. They were tortured for hours. We're talking pliers to pull out teeth, whips, even an old hand-cranked generator for electric shocks. This wasn't impulsive, heat-of-the-moment stuff. This was organized, systematic agony. It's how they earned the name the Torture Gang.
And it wasn't just happening behind closed doors. In one pub attack that was linked to the gang, a man was slashed across the face so badly he needed 60 stitches. For the Richardsons, this unbelievable level of violence was just a normal part of doing business.
So you have to wonder, right? With this kind of iron-fisted, brutal control over London, how did it all end? How did these guys who seemed totally untouchable finally get brought down?
Well, here's how it all unraveled. First, their own violence just got too public, too brazen for anyone to ignore anymore. Second, and this is crucial, the famous code of silence finally broke. Key guys from inside their own firms turned informant. This gave the police exactly what they needed, leading to dedicated squads that systematically took these gangs apart and put them away for life.
But here's the crazy thing. Their story didn't really end when they went to prison. As the source material points out, their arrest was, in a very strange way, the beginning of their legend. They became these almost mythical figures, their violent reality twisted into folklore.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. The Krays and the Richardsons were gone. Their empires totally dismantled. But what did that do? It just created a new power vacuum, leaving us with one final, pretty unsettling question. In a world built on power and violence, what always rises up to fill the void?